Do you ever believe that blueberries are like sad berries because they're blue?
Sometimes. How's
Yeah,
that?
yeah, perfect.
Yeah, nice. Welcome to the Conscious Experience, the channel where you're going to find actionable, life-changing principles, perspectives, and insights. My name is Boris Kerjner, and today I'm here with my brother Mike Yap. How are you, brother?
Awesome, brother. How are you? So today let's talk about emotional intelligence.
Yeah, the core of how are you? Yeah.
I'm good. I'm fine. I'm sad.
So emotional intelligence is defined as the ability to both be aware of and recognize our own emotions and be able to manage them, and also be able to recognize the emotions of other people and know how to navigate that experience as well.
Awesome. Shall we start with maybe defining the words individually and then see how maybe they fit together? So, like, it's part intelligence and it's part emotion, right? That's what makes it emotional intelligence, I'm assuming. And so, do you think more people are in their intelligence or in their emotions in the world?
Yeah, I think that I think for the most part, we're all coming from, let's say, like you're in your head, right? And I think that this is the space where we typically navigate from. um, in your head versus like feeling what's happening in the moment creates this kind of like rigidity, and it's like we have very narrow ways of looking at reality. So sometimes, for example, from this more intelligent point of view, it's this space of, are you upset? No, I'm not upset. And the reason people have these reactions is because it's also thought to be unintelligent to be upset or to be emotional or to be caught in any kind of reaction, emotion, things like this. But what's the result? Is the result is that the emotions get like basically stuffed down, and then we're really operating more and more from our head, which is disconnected from the rest of our body, from our feeling body, from our sense of intuition, our sense of empathy, feeling each other, like this.
So that is like intelligence overtaking emotion, not being able to kind of let that go. How about situations where emotion overtakes intelligence?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, this happens also all the time, right? Like, there's been really beautiful studies done on people explaining why they do the things that they do. And primarily, it's found out that like this, we actually just have an emotional experience, like a desire, a want, basically what we talked about before, a craving and aversion. And then we use our intelligence, which is our intellect, our rationalization, to explain why we made this choice. But really, the choice was made on an emotional level. And then we use rationalization to basically justify our emotions, not only in choices, but many times it's like, I'm upset. Well, instead of really looking and listening and going into this experience, which is almost like a psychedelic experience of a trigger, we are like, I'm upset because you did this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this because of that. And we have this entire mental structure of how things should be, shouldn't be. Um, and we kind of leave this aspect of ourselves, which is really, I think, the core of anything that is called inner child work, anything that's called emotional actually intelligence, which is to really understand, to participate in, to be in touch with what's actually happening. And we cannot do that when we try to talk it away, when we project it somewhere else, or when we even deny that it's happening.
And do you think one thing leads to another? So do you feel like somebody's emotions lead to what they think? Or do you think thinking comes in first and then it leads to emotions? Maybe you can see both viewpoints. What do you think? What was the first answer that comes to mind?
Both. There's many things in nature that don't actually go just one way, and one symbol of this, like the infinity symbol, or the classical like snake eating its own tail, right? It's basically, it's like this question of what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? But it's that's not really the core of the situation. They definitely influence each other. I remember Dr. Hawkins, who had a big influence on my life. He said something like this, and I really get this. It's like one emotion can give rise to thousands of thoughts, right? Like, let's say I'm really angry, and then I just keep thinking, oh, this dialogue, this argument, this word, and I don't like that. I'm wasting my energy. I'm wasting my time. I'm stuck in this, and boom, 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 boom. But at the same time, each one of those reflects back the same emotion. And so it like feeds this sense of emotion. Typically, it just goes into exhaustion. People either numb themselves out, or they get exhausted, they fall asleep, they forget about it, and they move on. The core of it typically remains, untouched. The core of it, which is like, what is prompting this experience to arise in the first place? And this is the other really important thing that maybe we can touch on later, is that emotions, most of the time, have little to do with what's happening now and have a lot to do with what happened in the past. So I would kind of approach it like this. And at the same time, one certain thought, one certain kind of perspective or perception, like, somebody who hates Trump, they hear the word Trump, and emotion, right? And then that emotion sets off with a whole other cascade of thoughts. So I really feel like they very much feed into each other.
Nice. Let's move on to some examples, like practical real world examples. Obviously the things that we're feeling most nowadays are the same things we've been feeling forever, which is like relationships create emotions, financial stress creates emotions. Like maybe we can start with those two. People can probably relate to those. Yeah.
Yeah. So, emotional intelligence is a way of approaching when these are, so to speak, in balance, if we're looking at them as these, two sides of our experience. But emotional intelligence is like, how do we bring intelligence and cognizance and presence into our emotions? So let's take an example like you're suggesting, like maybe financial stress, right? Most of the time, the experience is, here I am, I'm at my computer, I'm doing my things, and I'm like, I have a desire, and I don't have enough money to achieve the desire. I feel this. And then I start to feel, oh, now my wife, she has a desire. What if I don't have, and this experience starts to coagulate, become thicker, become more real, the more we think about it. The only thing that we can say here is like, number one is it's really important to understand what's happening, because many times that this experience arises, we, instead of going to the emotion, which is actually this, like, again, like it's literally a psychedelic experience arising. Something is happening in your body. You're feeling things. Meanwhile, here you are, you're just sitting in your chair. Everything is fine. And all of a sudden you're feeling a lot and different things are pulling at you. Most people are not like, well, what's going on? What is this? What's happening? Right? But instead, it's like it's focused on the external things that are the trigger of that. If I only had this, I missed that deal, or my boss is so greedy, or whatever they may be thinking. And so the focus is, even though there's something prompting right in here, it's like the focus continues to go outwards, to projection, to blame, to trying to find an external reason why I feel this way. So the very core of the opening to emotional intelligence is to say, wait, what is actually going on? Let me just check in with what I feel. Maybe take a deep breath. Okay, I feel frustration. I feel inadequate. I feel lack. I feel okay. And then if we really want to follow the trail into healing, because what is this? It's pain, right? You're experiencing pain in your body. Meanwhile, there is no pain being inflicted on you. There's nothing literally that is forcing its will on you in this moment. This moment is just exactly the same kind of moment that happened, a few moments ago before you had this thought. So nothing really changed, except something internally is arising. So one of the most powerful questions that I have discovered is, when is the first time that I remember feeling this way? When is the first time that I felt this, that I remember feeling this kind of lack, this kind of inadequacy, this kind of frustration? And 90% of the time, like, what was happening is if we go and we follow that trail down, it's like we get into a very small space, and it's typically a very childlike space. And it could just simply be that, you know, maybe your grades weren't up to par, your parents were very disappointed. It's very unique to each of us. It could be a very innocent moment, like, you know, you showed somebody something and they were busy with something else and they just ignored you and say, oh, you know, show me later. And they never asked again. And it's heartbreaking. It's crushing. And so we are walking around here as adults carrying these unresolved moments, because what can a child do with this except feel crushed, feel inadequate, feel less than, feel a lack? And there's nobody to explain to them, hey, you know what? Mom was just busy. It's got nothing to do with your performance or your who you are or any of this. So as we follow that trail down and we say, oh, it's wow, the first time I remember is I'm remembering showing this picture to my parents. Well, what does this say now? This says that the experience that we're typically, like, we not typically, the experience that we're initially pushing against, trying to get rid of, trying to blame for how we feel, actually has nothing to do with how we feel. And it has everything to do with bringing us back to this place. And if we take on this context of really spiritual evolution, what we're about in this channel is like bringing light, bringing consciousness, bringing awareness to these experiences, then we have to know that this is essentially what the Buddhists would call samskaras. Michael Singer talks about this also. It's essentially like, imagine that we are just these pure open beings, and every pore in the body is open. Let's imagine this now energetically. We're just like this radiant sun with these etheric kind of like channels through which our radiance flows out. And then suddenly there comes this moment. We're not seen by our parents. And there's a little twist. There's a little kink in that flow. And now in this one area, there's a little kink. But as we continue to move through life, we continue to accumulate different little kinks, which we don't know what to do with. It just hurts when we touch it. And so we're like, no, let's not touch it. Nobody should see this. And we keep on hiding it and putting it all away so that nobody will shame us for it. Meanwhile, we are deeply kinked up. And so that profound etheric connection of like insight, connection to oneness, feeling all that is, being present in the moment, is completely usurped by these programs that are made to basically be defending and protecting these areas of hurt so that nobody sees them, and at the same time putting in a lid on that entire world that all it needs, all it wants is to breathe. It just wants to breathe. It wants to be seen. It wants to see the light. It wants to be released. And so this was kind of a a long journey, but we're really saying here is like these are mystical moments. These are moments that offer us a doorway into awakening. They're not simply your boss being greedy.
It's awesome. So good, Boris. Yeah, it reminds me of like, so Boris was mentioning samskaras. Basically you can think of them like little scars within the light body. And the Buddhists and the Tantrics believe that the only way to really remove them, you can do all the outward ritual you want, but is through the practice of deep meditation, which again we always recommend you guys do. That moment to take to give the silence and the space to these things that once accumulated in your past experience. In the tantric philosophy, many of the meditations, there's a book called The Vigyan Bhairav of Tantra, shows 108 ways to realize God. Many of these ways are through the emotions and the emotional body. So just taking that time to really reflect on why you're angry or why you're sad, and not to like try to focus on something else and bypass that feeling, but really to notice it in the body and breathe fully, deeply, meditate deeply, contemplate deeply on what that is within your body. And that is, like Boris, you mentioned, a doorway to the infinite. So
Beautiful. I'm recalling one of my teachers sharing at one point, this kind of quote stays with me. It's like, any emotion fully felt is bliss. This is the quote. So, and I find this to be true in the sense that, like, basically, like the another way to think about the emotional baggage, this connection, this twist, this sanskara, is it's like a pressure cooker. Like each one of these little pockets is like one of those pressure cookers that, they have this little nozzle that like lets out the steam as it's cooking. But we have to understand that every emotion, every pressure cooker is limited in its amount of energy. This is the thing that turns us away initially from emotions. It's like, oh, I just want to like distract myself. Let me have a drink. Let me have a smoke. Let me play some kind of music. Let me like meditate it away, which is a very different. There's so many. You go on YouTube, you're going to find like all of these meditations. Get rid of anxiety. Get rid of this. Get rid of that. Yes, okay, we get it. We understand why. But the core of the why is because it seems like it's going to consume me. It's going to take my day away. It's going to take my joy away. It's going to take things away from me. It doesn't feel good. And most of the time when an emotion comes up and we're not conscious, we just start fighting it off like as if it was a fly, trying to eat our food. But the thing is that if we really understand that each emotion is limited in its amount of energy. Emotion means energy in motion. So just being present with it, just having your awareness on it, like perhaps, what some of those tantric techniques are, is just beholding what is happening. And it's like, it reminds me of Vipassana in the way that, in Vipassana, you're watching your sensation and you say, oh, let's see how long it will last. And you know that it actually will run out because everything is, as they say there in Pali, anicca, which is impermanence, impermanence, impermanence. If you recognize that every emotional experience that you have is impermanence, then you can say, okay, well, all right, so here's frustration, here's sadness, here's anger, here's grief, here's shame. Have my body. You have permission to be fully you in my body. You have permission to be shame in my body, guilt in my body, all of this. And you allow it, and you'll find that in a few moments, the deeper you surrender, the deeper you relax, deeper you like open to it, it just opens into relaxation. And in a certain moment, you're going to notice, oh, I'm thinking about something else. This entire experience is gone. This whole thing I was trying to avoid is gone. Yeah.
Nice. That's how to enter bliss realms through your suffering or your painful emotions. I like that. Yeah, you had mentioned that emotions are really just energy, which that's very true. That's why I think it's very important to consciously put yourself in intense emotional situations consciously, rather than having them blindside and hit you in the side of the face, which is like, I'll just give you an example, which is why people always say exercise is good for your emotions, because it's good for consciously putting yourself through something difficult so that the rest of your day or whenever you need a reset, it doesn't really affect you as much. Like when I go to the gym and I literally use all of my energy, all of my willpower consciously to, this is just one example, hit a heavy bag, that kind of energy and that movement, I feel like it's really good for feeding the soul, a contrast to maybe the smaller things in the rest of the day that could put me in an emotional situation where I'm not consciously centered. You know what I mean? So
yes, like, so applying challenge and challenging yourself, definitely, physically exerting yourself is definitely one way to activate that spot in us. It's basically the spot of like endurance and resilience, like that space that, what is the problem with emotion? Like, why do most people just like get up and like leave? Oh, I can't be here anymore. Oh, I don't want to be. Why is that happening? It's because of a lack of stamina, right? It's just like we have this tickle, this sensation. Oh, it's an uncomfortable sensation. Slam the door. Relax. It's just a sensation. But like when you are engaging your body, you actually, I think we are somehow training ourselves in that space. It's like, oh, it's okay. Oh, here's an uncomfortable sensation. It's okay. I do it again. So I think that this is definitely one way. And it really reminds me also of another one of my teachers, Jonathan England. He shared this, which I really like. Also another like nice quote. It's like, you either meet it by chance or by choice, by chance or by choice. And if you meet it by chance, you literally, it's like you have no control, no preparation. Great. Everything that you've done up to that point in life is what you will use to navigate that moment. Maybe nothing, So, but by choice is where you actually say, you know what? I am aware of this emotional thing of this discomfort that arises with me when we talk about this subject. Or, that space, when sometimes we're afraid to talk to somebody about something, or it just feels like, oh man, I just don't want to touch that. That is the spot that he would say, if you want to meet it by choice, go there. Go to that conversation. Have the uncomfortable conversation, because you can actually prepare yourself for this moment. You could say, okay, I'm going to come into a moment where there's going to be this arising of a psychedelic experience of emotion or trigger. I am ready for it. I know that I am actually safe. Nothing's going to happen to me here. I don't need to leave. I don't need to go anywhere. We prepare ourselves for it in this way. And then we're so much more likely to be available and to be conscious and to be intentional, versus when it just blindsides us and we have to react, and we typically don't we typically do react and not respond, and we have no intentionality or choice in the matter.
What you're saying is so beautiful. Let's go deeper into that. So one, we can maybe say when you're blindsided, and let's use relationship because I think a lot of people will resonate with this. Relationship as the topic, and then one, when you're in an emotional blindsight and it hits you, and then two, where you create, like you mentioned, conscious space. Let's say you create a practice every day for an hour, specific time. You and your partner sit down and really just take the first couple minutes or minute to really tune into the emotions of the day, and then share with each other in a safe space. I don't know if this is healthy or not, because what I'm talking about is, I love your opinion. Even if you have anger for your partner, it's like everything is allowed within this time frame. All the emotions can come up, which is again a conscious practice. But let me know your thoughts on both.
I think that's beautiful, Mike. I think that is definitely one way to meet it by choice. For me and my wife, we have a time called sacred space, where we basically say, one of us can call it. It's like, hey, would you like to have some sacred space? And it's basically a time for this heart-to-heart sharing, where we have certain kind of structure in place, don't interrupt each other. We don't argue. It's just like this: share, received, thank you. We can take turns, and now this share, etc. And this is really good for those moments where we know that in the past we have fallen, or there's already something active in that moment. So it's also, though, very delicate in the sense that we never know what particular word or something may set somebody off, or may feel to them like they're already in this activated state, and then a particular topic or a particular angle just and then you may say, well, why did I enter into this sacred space? Why did I meet it? I don't want this. I'm opening up a can of worms. Why do we need to look in here? This is, I feel like there's some balance between this. It's like, and I really learned this, I think, from my dad and his spouse. It's this space of pick your battles. How many things do you want to, you can nitpick into things. You can be like, well, there's this glance you gave me, or this, or whatever it is, and you can go into it. Or let's say that your partner leaves something, in a way that you don't like it, or you talked about it's going to be different, or some part of the daily routine is upset. And you can say, and this is the real moment of choice, where it's like, okay, do I need to process this with my partner, or can I process this also on my own? Because what if I know that with my partner, it's like, it's like, if we do this kind of daily, and I'm like, you know what, I need some sacred space. I'm upset that you left this thing out, and we keep on doing this back and forth. It may be good depending on the context, or it may be a little bit debilitating. It may be nitpicky, and it may feel like, wow, all we're doing is just sitting here and processing and processing. So I think that there's a balance, and the balance, though, is very important. It's not suppression of what we're feeling. That is never the answer. If you're picking between suppressing and sharing and saying, hey, let's process something, something's on my heart, I would always recommend, of course, just share, deal with the aftermath. But we also have to remember, we have our own capacity to process emotion. So if it's something simple like this, you can also come into your own experience and just, like we did earlier. Okay, what am I feeling? Anger, because she did this, she left this out. Okay, when's the first time I remember feeling this kind of anger? Yeah, oh, I remember when I left something out and my parents got so angry at me, And we make this kind of connection, and then we say, okay, so it's not really that big of a deal that there's like the, smoothie cup is left out, where we said was going to go there and now it's here. That couldn't be really the core of what like my upset and anger is about. And so doing this little space and kind of illuminating, well, a second, it's not all coming from here. This cup being out doesn't deserve all of this. This must be coming from somewhere else. And then we are with that part, and how to be with that part. This is something that is, I think, very foreign to people. And it's that part of emotional intelligence that says like how to manage our emotions. And there's many ways. Like I remember, his name escapes me. There's a famous like Buddhist monk. He wrote the book Diamond in Your Pockets, and Thich Nhat Hanh, I think. Yeah. He's like, just take your emotional experience as if it were an infant and just hold it. Just hold it in your hand. You might say, okay, it's kind of a visualization, kind of like a, and you're just like, it's okay. I got you. Yeah. And you're talking to that part of yourself that you just remembered, like that your parents got angry at you because you didn't put something away. And you just hold it and you say, hey, it's okay. You know what? They just have their own troubles. They're feeling separate. They're feeling stressed. It's got nothing to do with you that they're upset about this. You putting a cup in a different place is no threat to anybody, and we're just meeting it, and we're not trying to talk it away, but we're trying to really meet and understand, and hear there's a message, I feel like, in every emotion. And the message is primarily, wake up. It's not like that anymore, but to get to that place, we have to be willing to feel through the storm, because that emotion is storming.
Beautiful. I like that. Yeah, wake up. How about you give an example where, I don't know if you can think of one recently where you've been woken up with a blindside, like a God's hand to the side of your face, and you all of a sudden find yourself in an emotional tug of war that feels like you can't resolve it. Is there anything that comes to mind, or
Well,
some
yeah.
techniques like jumping into cold water or something, dispersing the energy?
I mean, that would be brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to rely on cold water. If you're in the desert, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's definitely. I remember actually in the past taking cold showers when I was feeling. Right now here in Florida, there is no such thing as cold shower. When you turn on the water cold, it's lukewarm. But I remember being in Vancouver and like just okay, and all the emotion disappears. And there is something to this energetically. I remember maybe it was Sadhguru or something who was speaking about this. It basically said that the cold water has this kind of like shock effect, and it releases energies that are kind of stuck to your energy body, light body, or something like this. So I remember. I mean, I reached out to you during that time. That was probably the most intense time that I recently remember having an emotion that felt completely unresolvable, right? Like my wife and I had a miscommunication about making plans. And then to me, I was just like, so what? We had a miscommunication. But to her, it was very much like, you left me out of the decision. You didn't say to me. And I'm like, but we did talk about this earlier. And so to me, instead of yielding and saying, okay, you know what? I'm sorry. I hear that you wanted it differently. And I'd love to give it to you differently. I'm not here to withhold something that you want. I'm not here to try to prove a point, whatever you want. Yeah. And I'm sorry it didn't work out the way you wanted it. Instead of that, I was just like, and this is the big part of us growing in this emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. It was like, no, I'm not wrong. We did talk about it. And through her experience of like, yes, you are wrong. Yes, you are. Yes, you left me out. And me like, no, I haven't. No, I didn't. Through there, it got up to such a point that I was just like, boom. And like, I was just like, I got it. I hear you. I understand that you think this way. But I never reached through and said, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's not working out for you in your world. And she could have done the same thing for me. She could have also said, well, Boris, you know what? I am very upset, but I hear that in your world, we did talk about it. I do remember we talked about it in that way, but that's not the way I'm speaking right now. But I just want to meet that part of you that feels like, wronged and framed and, all of that, I want to say, yeah, I see you. I do remember that. It's just, so anybody on either side of the relationship has this capacity, but only when we're conscious, only when choice is illuminated, because otherwise we're really just running in old patterns. And as kids, we had very little choice. It was very easy to manipulate us. It's very easy to be like, make us feel a certain way, make us feel excited or make us feel sad. It's like, hey, there's a jar of candy on the fridge. No, there isn't. And it's just like, and so because we trust everything so implicitly. So I remember that. And after that explosion, it just felt to me completely almost like irreparable. Irreparable in the sense of like, this person just doesn't understand me. Like, how could they not understand me? How could she be upset at me? How could she make this all into such a big deal? Right? And it builds and it builds. And it just feels like, how can I even approach this person? I already approached them so many times on this one topic, and it just keeps exploding. She keeps pointing it back at me. Right? That was a really tough space emotionally, where I didn't want to just step back and feel my emotions and figure out, okay, what's actually going on? Is this real-time emotion or is this just coming from the past? Instead, I wanted to just make sure that I'm not being blamed, that I'm not the bad one, that I am acknowledged in the fact that I did do the right thing at some point, And I think this is what prevents us from really being able to process emotions in a healthy way. And a big part also of emotions, I say, is communication, right? To be able to communicate about our emotions and in the midst of emotions. I have to say, from that state, it's completely, seemingly impossible. It just feels like a dead end.
Yeah, emotions are so crazy. They like you said, it's like the Buddhist, you always mention this, it's like craving and aversion. We crave for good emotions, like to make us smile, and then we avoid the ones that suck. And you're right. It starts when we're kids, right? Like to make somebody smile is so easy. Just like, you're looking beautiful today, or just like cracking a joke, or anything that we do is manipulating our reality in some way. Typically it's making us happy or it's making us sad. So we're not saying poo-poo your emotions, and in fact we really want you to actually, one of my favorite videos of yours, Boris, is one you did, like, I don't know, like 9 years ago or something. Check that out if you guys want it. It's the one on heartbreak, and it's
That's
like,
one of my favorites too.
yeah, it's like really like tuning into that heartbreak.
I do want to say about this, that in that video, there's a perspective that's shared. And that perspective is not something that we did touch on it, but I really want to illuminate it. The perspective is that each time we experience a trigger, it is a good thing. It is not a bad thing. It does not mean you're wrong or you're flawed or that you missed heaven or that you're unenlightened. It doesn't mean any of these different things that basically make us feel like, oh, this is an unapproachable subject. It is more like, let's say that you have somewhere in your house, you have like maybe a rat that died, okay? And smell it? Oh, something smells. Let me spray Febreze. Spray Febreze everywhere. Okay. Oh yeah, chemicals. Oh, I fucking love this. But you're saying, okay, no. Instead of just covering it up, instead of saying it's not here, because you know what we say again, like in the beginning, maybe you come to me and you say, it smells like something died in here. No, I don't smell it. And that's the way we approach our emotions typically, or our triggers. Hey, are you triggered? No.
Your example is hilarious.
But it's like this. It's like, well, hold on a second. What is prompting this? Because we often think that it's the outside thing, it's the outside person or situation that's making us feel this way. We don't realize we have a dead rat in our consciousness that's stinking up the place. And so if we just take this as a moment of grace, of somebody saying something was left behind there, 9, 10, 20, 50 years ago, take a look. I don't want to. This is the whole point. If you open yourself up to the fact that in that video, I talked about it as if it's basically this divine surgeon doing open heart surgery, doing a bypass for us, allowing us to basically come back into healing, come back into, maybe it's cutting out the samskara, so to speak. But in another way to speak about it is just, it's like a cleaning up. Because if we really think about what enlightenment is, if you listen to like sages and teachers and like the more deep teachings, not the ones how to manipulate your reality, but it's like they say it's not about adding anything to you. It is about removing things. Enlightenment is about having less. It's about having less in your mind. It's about having less baggage, so to speak. It is the dropping of concepts. It's the dropping of beliefs, not adding better beliefs, not trying to stack things up and add to yourself, because you can't add anything. If you think about it, it's like here is this dream. We have it. At some moment, my eyes are going to close and I'm not going to be here anymore. What can I add to it? Nothing I can add. So it's like there's this knock and it's asking, hey, let this out. Get the rat out. Get the stink out. Let it go. Drop it, is the invitation of every trigger. So for all of us here on a spiritual journey, on a journey of enlightenment or empowerment, or even let's talk about, again, just finances, being successful in your relationships, in your finances, in your work. The best possible thing that you can do is not try to put some powdered sugar and spray Febreze over a dead rat and say, hey, it's a birthday cake. But instead you say, well, let me actually look at what this really is and let it out. I don't want it anymore. Yeah, you want to come out? Come out. Come out. Let it out. And what's going to happen is, can you imagine how much more effective you would be in your relationship if you drop like your top 3 triggers? Let's say you drop your top 1 trigger. Imagine that you resolve one trigger that has been the most prevalent in your relationship. Wouldn't that be a life-changing experience? That would completely shift the way that you interact with your partner. Or in your work, like, what's your number one stressor? What's the number one thing that gives you a rise? What if we can go and allow that open heart surgery to happen? We say, oh yeah, I'm open. I'm available for this. Work me. Take this out, right? So I really just wanted to highlight the magic and the gift of a trigger. I know it doesn't feel like it in the moment. We're not saying it's going to feel like rainbows and sunshine and butterflies. It's going to feel like pain. But the core of this is that let the healing take place. Don't just feel the pain and stuff it back down, but feel the pain and say, okay, it's an extraction. All right, there it goes. And be just willing. Maybe if you've never done this, do it one time. One time you're feeling the emotion, let it burn off of you, as if you're laying in the sun and you just dipped yourself in the ocean, and then you just see, all of the water is going to go away. It's all going to be lifted up. It's all going to evaporate. In the same way, you just lay down with the emotion. You become still with it. Watch it evaporate. Watch it evaporate as you don't resist it, as you don't label it, as you don't blame other people for it, as you stop projecting it, and you just sit there with it on your chest, on your lap, in your heart, in your stomach, in your throat, wherever it is. And I promise you, you're not going to walk out of that experience with that smell still on you. It's going to burn off over time. So I just wanted to really highlight this because I think it's the core of our spiritual journey, and it's not talked about so readily. We tend to want to meditate and transcend, but transcending. I posted a quote recently on Facebook that was so alive for me in that moment. It's like, oneness is reached through our emotions, not by going away from emotions. Because, of course, think about it. Oneness. It means that you are one with, right? As long as there's you and the emotion, what you have is you have duality and you have this tug of war. So what surrender really is suddenly the oneness is the oneness is apparent. Suddenly the two-ness, like it's the process of yoga, right? It's the union. It's like surrender is like, okay, I'm not going to have a separate will that's trying to make this moment different than it is. And that is I feel like one of the most powerful ways to process our emotions.
That's beautiful, Boris. As you were speaking and you were talking about kind of letting it out and go, and then you went into oneness, I was thinking, what is like the one outward expression that we use for almost all emotion? If we were just to take like, and when we like label emotion, I feel like there's like 108 million different emotions that we kind of like categorize, and like just infinite emotion, and we just talk, if we were to label it, it's really just all energy, right?
Mhm.
And that energy for me, when I can think of like the most emotional things, it's like love, heartbreak, anger, sadness, things like that, right? And it all comes down to, I think, if we were really to tap into it, we cry. That's like kind of the outward expression of it, right? We cry. We like and crying, I think, is amazing. I wish I could cry more. It's like this combination of like something that touches you so deeply in your heart, and like a like laugh to like kind of like shake all the emotion out, right? It's like the divine's way of uh when you hit like a spot that is in its extreme, you just freaking cry. So I think crying is an interesting one. I would love to share a quote if you don't mind.
Yeah,
About
absolutely.
this. All right, here's a quote from this book called Emerald Campaign. You can't really see it when I hold it up to the camera because of my lack of green screen, but Emerald Campaign. Check it out. It's a self-author or self-published author on Instagram with poems. So this one I read yesterday. I thought it was beautiful. So let me share it. So it says, "We cry at birth and in our early years to express ourselves before we learn to speak. Yet it remains a part of us for the rest of our lives, because no matter how many words we know, sometimes what we feel can only surface through our primordial form of expression."
Mm,
So it's basically saying that we cry as a baby because we don't know how to express ourselves, and that is like like I said, the most powerful emotion. And then we
yeah.
continue that in our adult years because for the most part, we don't know how to express ourselves, and it's just like that primordial call back to awaken if you're conscious.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I love what you're sharing there. Like, and you mentioned earlier also about laughter. I really feel that the way that you know that you've completed a particular emotional pocket, that it's cleared out, that it has been extracted, is that it ends in crying or laughter. And even many times that crying can turn into laughter. It's like you cry, 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 and then crying has this heaviness, and then it's lightness. And typically at the end of that, there's either a smile or there's a laughter. And it's really important to also understand that we have primary emotions and secondary emotions. And emotions like anger are secondary emotions. They're the emotions that are protecting our sadness, protecting our shame, protecting our guilt. Like we may feel very shamed about, let's say, sexuality. And instead of really addressing and feeling that shame so that it can be extracted, so it can evaporate, we go around and we project it at other people. And we say, oh, look at this. Oh, look, her nipples are showing through her shirt. How scandalous, how shameful, right? And we're going around and we're just finding these little areas in the world. Like we're trying to find like, oh, this advertisement or that. And this is the thing, is that anger is the whole point of this example, is to really say that anger, frustration, different things like this, we have a layer of protection. We have a layer of protection that can also look like intellectualization or rationalization. It can look like normalization. Like we basically try to do different things so that we don't have to feel. And this is actually really, really important for us to discern. It's just like, um, many times we have this question, what do I do? Like, I am feeling this way, and it's like, what do I do? What do I do? What do you do so that you don't have to feel what? And the whole point of most of the time of our doing, of our action, is so that we don't have to feel what is already obviously rotting in us for years. So this is the beautiful thing, is like what you, I think, brought into it, is like this is the litmus test. So if you have a subject on which you cannot cry or laugh about, that means that you're somewhere in the upper levels of not quite processing through to the freedom, and the freedom will be lightness and laughter.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true, eh? Every time you cry, it kind of ends with like a such a relief that you have to smile and you get to look back at the situation. Yeah, what a beautiful mechanism in the universe that allows us to cry and laugh, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey Boris, so what are your thoughts on like, do you think there's like emotional levels, like different scales of emotions that we can notice, recognize? Has there been a system that kind of explains that?
Yeah, this is actually there's several systems that I'm aware of. One of the foundational ones that might have started it all, I'm not sure, is David Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And in there, the scale is basically also identifies what is the primary emotion of a particular level of consciousness. So it goes things like shame, guilt, anger, pride, and then it starts to flip into the more life affirming ones like courage, acceptance, willingness, love, and on like this. And I think sometimes this gives this sense that there is, you know, the negative emotions are low, these lower emotions are bad. It seems like this judgment scale. And then we also have, like, for example, Abraham Hicks scale, right, of how to get into the vortex. And it's like, again, these different emotional levels. And her basic teaching, Esther's basic teaching is that try to feel a little bit better, like feel higher, feel a little higher. Don't try to get all the way to bliss. Just go from anger to, acceptance or something like this. So it's also really important, I think, in our conversation here to highlight this, because I think there's also great validity. We're talking about feeling through these like past traumas, these samskaras, and that is that I think is a very core and deep principle of spiritual work. But there is also this understanding of the emotional guidance system, that we have emotions that basically tell us something about our experience, about our perception. This is the other really important thing in this. Our emotions are only responding to our perception, right? They're not responding to what is actual, what is in the world. Like if I see like the Ukraine war, let's say, for example, and I'm like, oh, this is how I feel about the Ukraine war. No, that's not how you feel about the Ukraine war. You have no idea about the Ukraine war. You are feeling about your perception, the conceptual framework that you have built based on information input that you collected from different sources and your own past. Everything that you're perceiving is based on your past. You're interpreting everything through those past experiences. And so all of our emotions are only indicating something about our perception. Okay. So I think this is level one. Emotions are indicating something about perception, not something about reality or something about the world or the other person. Now, what are they actually saying? What is their message? So in this teaching, in this vibrational teaching, the message is basically this. The worse you feel, as let's say you think about the Ukraine war, or you think about your lack, or something that you have stress somewhere in your life, the way that you're thinking about it, the worse that you feel, your emotional guidance system is telling you this: the further you are away from the truth of what? The truth of your, let's call it your soul alignment, the truth of which perspectives are relevant to you, the truth of, and if we really go to this, that if everything's like, remember we said in the beginning, every emotion felt fully is bliss. And if we see everything through cleansed perception, so to speak, we see a beatific world. We see a world that reflects oneness, that reflects love, that reflects just perfect synchronicity. We see that. It's not that it's not there right now. It is here right now. Right in the midst of our war-torn world, so to speak, is all of that. Synchronicity, beatific vision, all of this. But as we relate to our perceptions, what's happening is that we are basically having this feedback mechanism. Let's say that you say, okay, well, how do I feel about this subject? Contraction. What this means is that the perspective that you have on that situation is not in alignment with your highest knowing, with your highest, let's say, level of consciousness. So if you feel this contraction, say, well, what's another way that I could look at this? You're going to find, actually, well, if you try these different perspectives on, you're going to find that there are better feeling perspectives and worse feeling perspectives. I remember one of my earlier teachers basically had me put them in my hand, and they say, okay, something, making a decision in life. Okay, do I go left? Put it in my left hand. Do I go right? Put it in my right hand. Which one feels lighter? Which one feels more vibrant? Yeah. And you basically use this discernment. And the better you feel about something, it means the more true it is, the more true it is in relationship to oneness, in relationship to your true position in life. So this is a way that we can use our emotional guidance system to help us to navigate these moments whenever we are beholding something and it feels like crap. This is how we have this conversation in our family. It's like, if it hurts, drop it. Just drop that perspective and see like, okay, is there another perspective? Because I'm only feeling based on a perspective and not an actual fact out there that's causing me to feel this way. So does that make sense about the emotional guidance system?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I just want to clarify that Boris does not mean if you're experiencing something to drop the thing and move to better feelings. He's and calling that your emotional guidance system. He's saying drop the perception about it. So he's not saying leave relationships because there's something that feels better over there, right? So
yeah, drop the perspective. Like, thank you so much for that. Like, the experience is like, let's say even we have a perspective about our emotion. Let's say that I was triggered, and I'm in a fight with my partner and I'm feeling this way, and I have a perception, this is wrong. I should not feel this way. I should be doing something else. And how does that perspective feel? That perspective feels contracting. That perspective feels in itself also frustrating. So we're stacking things on top of each other. So we can say, wait, well, maybe there's a different way to think about this. What if this, oh yeah, I remember that podcast. What if this is just all of this coming out? What if this is the last time I will feel this particular type of anger and frustration? Maybe I just need to let it all flow through me.
That's a good one.
Right?
That's a good question. What if it was the last time that you could feel this? Woo!
So it's like we're just shifting perspective. We're not trying to get away from feeling. This is a delicate kind of conversation, but yeah, so there is these two components. There's the Samskaras, which you do want to feel through, and there's also our perception, which when we perceive things certain ways and we have the feedback of our emotion, which says open or close. So even like our original, let's say, example, a fight with my partner, and I have that fight, and I'm like, oh, she doesn't understand me. She'll never understand me. And how does that feel? How does it feel to think that your partner will never understand you, doesn't want to understand you? Feels like crap. This is what I'm saying. Drop that perspective. Another perspective on that, she just wants to be heard. Something got triggered in her, and she really wants to be heard about this. It's got nothing to do with me. Oh, that feels lighter than my partner never wants to understand me, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about using the emotional guidance system to help you to choose perspectives that are more inclusive, more open, more loving.
So, Boris, say I'm a baby again. I'm your child. I just came into the world. Tell me about what kind of emotions I'm going to experience and how to deal with them.
That's great. Great question. I would say to you that my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. In this world, you're going to encounter challenge. You're going to encounter friction. You're going to encounter moments where things you desire don't seem to be there, and things you desire not to be there are inescapably present. And what I want you to know is that as you interact with those moments, you're going to feel sensations in your body. Your body is going to give you some sense about what is it that's unfolding. There's going to be emotions that make you feel like you're contracting and getting smaller. And there's going to be emotions and sensations in the body that make you feel like you're expanding and getting bigger. So what I want you to know about those is that as you move through life, allow your emotional guidance system to kick in. Allow yourself to really understand that when you're experiencing these moments of contraction, something in what you're perceiving is not quite aligned with love, not quite aligned with oneness, with freedom, with truth. It's basically a response to, in our innate system, to watching this human drama and seeing that, well, there's some things that don't quite add up, and they feel like loss, and they feel like lack, and they feel like inability and not enoughness, and all of this kind of bouquet. That in truth, none of this can be so, because here in this moment, here where we are, we always have everything that we need. We always have our breath. We always have our body's health. We always have our presence, our consciousness. And typically, we will always find things to eat and things to drink, and we'll maintain our survival until that's no longer relevant. So as you navigate these emotions, I want you to know that it's completely safe to feel all of them. And I want to invite you to just open entirely to the experience of emotions rushing through you, and know that you don't actually have to do a single thing. You're going to notice that most people, when they feel something, they're going to want to do something about it. What I want you to know is that this is completely not necessary, and in fact, kind of goes in the opposite way of where you want to go. The more that you just allow yourself to feel whatever it is that they're feeling, allow it to come, and you're going to notice that it's going to go. Allow it to come again, and it's going to go. And you don't have to do a single thing about it. You don't have to make a decision based on how you feel. You don't have to take an action based on how you feel. In fact, I think one of the most wisest things when you're feeling intensely is just to lay down or sit down and allow yourself to just be showered in this experience, pleasant or unpleasant. And I also want to talk to you about the pleasant emotions, the ones that make you feel expansive, the ones that make you feel alive, the ones that make you feel like you belong, that you're connected. I want you to follow those. I want you to tune into those, and I want you to be aware of what is it in my experience that brings this about, because these experiences are going to have clues for you about your authentic expression, about what way you can be here in the world and truly enjoy being here. So I think I would probably start something like this. This was just spitballed kind of in the moment, but I think that, yeah, really encouraging our children to feel better, not just feel better, not go to a better feeling, but to learn to feel better, which is a better way of feeling. Feel without fear. Feel even fear without fear, right? To just allow our sensitivity to engage with emotion, to allow it to run through us. I think that this is the most liberating way to move through this world, is just allowing what is to be, and knowing that everything is limited, everything is impermanent, everything's going to appear and disappear. And what's the point of fighting this moment if it's going to be gone the next?
Beautiful. You're welcome, Boris's future child, and also humanity. That's beautiful. Thank you, Boris.
Yeah, this is a very rich topic. If there's any particular emotion or any kind of like space where you're thinking about applying this and you're just not sure, I really invite you to drop it down in the comments so that we can interact with you, so we can take a look at some of these situations together. Maybe if there's enough interest in a particular one, when we can do a whole topic around that, a whole video around that, because the real core of what we want to offer you, what we want to bring to you here in this space, is a way of navigating, a way of moving, a way of meeting life moment by moment that gives you this sense of like okayness, gives you this sense of like, I'm not at war with life. There is a way through, and it's, the way is that nameless way. Like one of the most beautiful books and really touching my heart recently is the Tao Te Ching. And it's basically called the Book of the Way. And it talks about such smoothness as moving through the world and moving through all of the obstacles of the world. I highly recommend it. It's in these beautiful poetic verses. But this is what we're talking about. We're talking about developing a way of being here in the midst of chaos, in the midst of whatever seems to be on the news, whatever seems to be on our partner's mind, whatever seems to be on our own mind, that there's a way to move through it with grace, with ease, with skillfulness, with presence, with a sense of meaning and purpose, that is not in trying to manipulate something, but is in the journey itself, is in the moment itself. So just wanted to maybe conclude on that and offer this journey and invite you on this journey along with us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Boris. It's been a pleasure. And with that, I think we will say our goodbyes. God bless. Take care. We love you.
Thank
See
you.
you
Thank
soon.
you. Bye bye.